Okay, guys, welcome to part three of your database programming. And here we're going to look at, some data holders that we use for displaying data, either on our data grid view or on our Como box. So, but let's first look at the data grid view. So there's three types of data holders or classes that are used to read data. One's the data reader, which is used to read data from the database, and it is a read and forward only connection. So what this does is, so I'm just going to quickly grab a highlighter. So here, this is your command. So we know that the command has an SQL and it has a connection. So once the commands get to execute the SQL through the connection, what it does is the data reader, SQL data reader, executes this command. If it's an insert command, it executes that. If it's a select command, it executes that. And then so the data grid view has a data source. So the data source is the data that is going to be read by the data reader, and then it's just going to data bind that. Okay, and then you always need to close your connection. And then the second type of a data holder. So you can only use one, either data set or a data reader. So that is a data set. So the data set is a disconnected oriented architecture that allows you to add more than one data tables. So what this means is, over here, we still use our SQL command, which has the SQL, so the SQL is the query, and then it also has the connection. So what this does is it uses a data adapter so that you can convert the data from SQL readable to C# or Visual Studio C# readable. And then it has a data set. So a data set can store different types of tables. So from this data set, for an example, you can store table 1, and then from this data set, you can store table 2. So here I should have had, quotations the same as that to show that I'm naming a table. So your data grid view data source, you want to draw that data source either from table 2. If you wanted to use table 1, you could have used a second data grid view and used table 1. So the data source holds a number of data tables. Okay. And then now finally the last one is a data table, which represents a single table in the database. So that table is going to be executed using the SQL, and then it only has one table. Okay, the data table only has one table, and then so this is supposed to be an STA, but we're going to look at that in more detail. And then your data reader is going to have, sorry, your data grid view is going to have a data source, that is the data table. So now this is what happens. So firstly, I'm just going to take you through the steps. So firstly, you have going to look at the SQL command. So in order for your SQL command to be functional, it has to know the SQL connection, okay, which is your connection string. What should it connect to? So this is going to have your data source, which means that it's a local database, and then importantly, it's going to have your database name. So now, once it has the database name, it's going to have it. So your second parameter in your SQL command is your SQL statement. So the SQL statement is going to have then the name of the table is going to have what the SQL does. Is it an insert? Is it an update? Is it a select? And then if it's an insert or an update, therefore you need to know the text boxes, which is the graphical user interface that is used for inserting. But if it's a return, therefore you need a data adapter, which is going to return the data, and then you also need your data holders, either data table, data set, or your data reader. And then that means that now you're using select. And so this you can either display on a data grid view most commonly, or to a combo box also most common, but generally you display your data on GUI. So now in order for you to insert data, you need a connection. So you're going to have your SQL connection, and then over here you're going to pass that SQL connection string. And then you need to open your SQL connection, and then you also need your SQL statement. So SQL statement here you want to insert, and then you say into, and then you provide the table name that you want to insert into. And then once you've done that, you need the fields that you want to insert. So if you've got a name and a surname, so here you're going to say name, and then over here you're going to say surname. And then over here, you're going to use placeholders. So this is field 1, this is field 2. Placeholders are going to hold the values of these two since they are not known at this point. And then what you need to do is you need to have an SQL command which is going to execute this SQL over here, and then it's going to also point to the connection that you should have. So here you need your connection string as I've shown you. So now your insert, remember over there we had two placeholders. So these placeholders are called parameters. So you add code that says command.parameters.add with value. So this parameter over here is represented by this text box. This parameter over here is represented by this combo box. Okay, remember in a combo box we want the value because we do not want the text unless that's mentioned or specified. And then we need to now show that we have added. So this X indicates that you've added at least a row to your record. And then what you also need to do is to close your SQL connection. Update is also the same as insert. The difference is that you're now updating, and you also need a where clause where you're going to say you do not want to update everything, but you only want to update a few. Then when you're selecting, you are going to specify what you want to select from which tables, and you need to also join those tables. Okay, but I'm going to show you that when you're working with the code. And then as I've shown you, you need an SQL adapter, and you also need a data table, and you need a data source. Okay, when you're loading a combo box, there's two things you need to do. So there's two types of load over here. One is loading with a data set, one is loading with a data table. But the most important part is the display member. What should be displayed in your combo box, and what's the value of that? Okay, but we're going to discuss that in more detail. And then if you're using a data set, this is how you upload to your data from the database to a combo box. Okay, so I think that is all for this lesson, but most work is going to be on the practicals that I'm going to provide. Thank you.